Welcome back to Walsall Fan TV, the joy and the pain. Walsall at home to Carlisle on Tuesday night. So, good guy to talk to is going to be Jon Colman. Hi, Jon. Jon is the Cumbrian reporter for News and Star. And welcome to the show, first of all. I had a chat with Lee Rooney from the Brunsford Bugle. Just before the start of the season, new owners, pouring a lot of money in, so much excitement going into the season. How's it gone wrong so quickly? Paul Simpson, I thought he was the man for you, and he's moved on. Mike Williamson's in. What's going on, Jon? Why's it gone wrong?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think I always think momentum in football is a pretty powerful thing. And whether it was underestimated or not, it probably was in some circles, I guess. The momentum Carlisle came down with from League One was terrible, really. I think they lost something like 30 out of 46 games last season. They crashed back down and very rarely ever looked like avoiding that sort of fate. And I always think that no matter how much money you've got, no matter what sort of overhaul you have, I often think that is a very difficult thing to sort of get under control quickly. And as you've said, there are, relatively new owners. They've been in place for just under a year now. Certainly wealthy owners who've been spending millions on the stadium. They're going to build a new training ground. They've certainly generated a great deal of positivity and hope about the future of the club. That is absolutely unquestionable. But I think they're probably realising as much as anyone that this is a ship that's going to take a bit of turning around, because on the pitch, Carlisle just haven't been up to the mark. And yes, they've had injury problems. They've got quite a long injury list still. That's beginning to ease in one or two places, but they've just carried some of the existing problems and flaws probably down with them from last season. When they went up to League One, it was always going to be a struggle, because at that point they didn't really have the budget to compete with a lot of sides of that level. When they came up to the playoffs, it was kind of a bit of a pleasant surprise how well they did really then. And that was great credit to Paul Simpson and the job he did and those players. They lost one or two of those players after going up. They really struggled, I think, to recruit proper hardened League One ready players to really, lift them up a level, I suppose, in all sorts of ways. And it started unraveling, really. They relied on the January window, I think, as a bit of a panacea. And I think everyone knows that's a far from a guarantee wherever you are. And unfortunately, things got worse rather than better after that. And yeah, unfortunately, despite a bit of a summer overhaul, some one or two big name signings for Carlisle standards, extremely good wages came in, and it hasn't lived up to expectations at all. And I think the expectation part is probably part of it too. There are certainly now clubs in League Two with smaller budgets than Carlisle, with smaller fan bases, that are maybe more used to being cast in the underdog kind of image, maybe, that are maybe not expecting to be down there struggling, but a bit more accustomed to maybe what it takes to be scrambling and battling down there. Carlisle were targeting promotion this season. A lot of people thought, yes, this is going to be a bounce back because of the money we've spent, etc., etc. We're going to be flying again. So there's a real bit of despondency, really, about the position, which you can understand. The squad is lacking certain things. They certainly don't have a great deal of pace in the squad. They've not had a great deal of stability in team selection because of injuries, because of results, because of form. And they've conceded a lot of goals, a lot of bad goals, really. They've got the worst defensive record in the division. And on top of that, Paul Simpson's way in the end ran its course. Some people argued he should have gone sooner than he did this season. I think his legend status meant that the owners gave him more time. I think a lot of supporters gave him more time as well. There were some that were wanting that change to be made earlier. Perhaps they've been proved right, because it certainly, the start of this season was really poor. And one wonders, had that change been made sooner, could Carlisle have arrested it? We'll never know that. There's no way of knowing that. And it's a case of now adjusting under Mike Williamson. who's trying to implement a different style of play. I'm sure everyone is probably aware the type of football Mike Williamson's teams are known for playing. And I guess it's in that awkward transition time at the moment where he's trying to do that with a struggling team who've been used to playing a certain way that was failing in the end. But the question is, can they adjust and make this new style of play successful enough on the pitch in the short term to get them results, to make them harder to beat, and to ease some of the real worries at the moment about where this season might go. So it's a transitional time, certainly, and we just hope that it's not going to be a painfully transitional one for too long.
It's difficult to change that style during the season. I think you need a close season and some time to really get into that. There's some interesting points, Jon. I think the fact that at home you're attracting more than 8,000 is a pull as well. So when people are going there, it is a bigger occasion. Charlie White, Luke Armstrong, two big players really that you'd expect more from. Last season, you think Christian Dennis letting him go? Do you think that was a mistake?
Arguably. I think Christian Dennis's record since then perhaps suggests not. Although he was certainly an excellent servant and goal scorer for Carlisle in his time here, that's absolutely unquestionable. He was the first man to get over 20 goals in a season since Carl Hawley, who obviously has great connections between our two clubs.
One we let go.
Yeah, and then he, again, the value of a goal scorer, a goal machine in form. Both those two guys. So yeah, they offered Christian Dennis, I think because of his age and perhaps the step up to League One, they offered him a 1-year deal. He got a 2-year offer from Tranmere. Understandably, again at his stage, he accepted that. I'm not necessarily sure it was letting Dennis go that was the problem so much as not being able to replace him with a good League One caliber centre forward. Recruiting strikers that summer proved very difficult, and in the end they leaned on the loan market. That didn't particularly work either, and so these things leave you a bit behind the 8 ball. So yes, it would have been interesting had they retained Dennis, because he was used to that team. He was a good goal scorer for that team.
He's a good player to have around as well, I think.
Yeah, I think so. There was a good dressing room in that promotion season. Certainly, a lot of the players have referred to that, and he was, a senior head and part of that. So, yeah, I think in hindsight, certainly you would have sooner kept him than let him go. But I think the idea was that they'd have been able to perhaps recruit better for League One. In the end, it just didn't happen.
In this season, as we say, Wyke and Armstrong, have they been poor? Are you disappointed with them? So Saturday, you guys had 9 shots on target and only buried one of them. So is that just coming up against a good keeper, or the quality of the shot is not quite there? What's the...
A bit of all those things, Simon, to be honest. I don't think anyone would argue that the strikers have had top quality service this season so far. That said, Charlie White should have more goals to his name. He missed a couple of really good chances early in the season, and you wonder if he'd stuck those away, whether he would have got into that groove that we were all expecting him to sort of straight away, because he was a real marquee signing, a really popular signing. He'd obviously been at Carlisle before, and he was made captain. He was really designed to be the figurehead of this drive up back up League Two. So even a player as experienced as that can probably have sort of crises of confidence and periods where he needs, he needs a bit of luck perhaps, but also I don't think Charlie White would argue that his own performances individually have been what he would expect, what everyone would expect either. He hasn't looked in free flowing as such. He's never been a free flowing runner as a centre forward, but you expect someone with his years, his experience, his sort of acumen in the position to be bringing more to the table than he is. So he hasn't really looked as sharp as you might expect. Armstrong hasn't hit the goal trail that, again, the club were hoping. That is essentially the club's record signing. What the exact fee is, we're not too sure. But so they invested a lot of money in him too, and he's shown it in flashes at the most, really. And again, it's a case of he's one where his work rate can't be questioned. It's just, yes, there's been moments such as Saturday. He showed sort of good instincts and good persistence to get that goal against Harrogate. He did similar at Swindon when he got his previous goal a few games ago. There hasn't been any consistency in delivery from him and in service, I suppose, too. But I always think that to some extent good players can find a way, and we're still waiting for that with a number of these players, really, and the collective to get the best out of them from the coaching too.
I think what you said was very pertinent about sort of momentum, because we do see it with teams that get relegated in the same way that teams that get promoted. The start of the season, teams that have got promoted have got that belief. And we've seen it from Bromley. Bromley came up with some good results early doors. Things have sort of drifted off for them a little bit. But we saw the same when Grimsby came up. They're just used to winning games.
Yeah.
And then when you cut teams coming down, it is tough. And of course, was it Forest Green went all the way through?
Yeah.
It takes a lot to arrest a slide if you've had a particularly bad season like you have.
Definitely.
But having the money there, and Mike Williamson, he certainly knows how to organise a team. So I think it's probably something that'll turn for you. But when confidence is down, it's a tough one, isn't it? The 4-0 loss at Wimbledon, that must have been a tough one.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, the first half was as bad a performance as a lot of people could remember, actually, for a long time. And when you consider how many games Carlisle have lost in the recent past, that's quite a statement.
Yeah.
But one I would certainly concur with. It was totally a desolate first half performance. There was no energy about the team. There was no real purpose about the team. They barely got out of their own half. No cohesion, no sign of what is the plan to beat a good Wimbledon team who was sharp and was strong.
Yeah.
And 3-0 at half time flattered Carlisle, in all honesty, and it could have been more. So that was you come away from that thinking this has got to be rock bottom now. That has to underline how serious the predicament is. That has to underline how short we are at the moment, and what a scrap this is going to be to get this in better shape. Because it was very difficult. It sent Carlisle to the bottom of the league as well, which just sort of rubber stamped the worst day you could hope for, really.
Yeah. Harrogate, you should have beat them, I think, from all the stats. Large 70% possession, all the shots. They only had 2 shots on target all game and scored with one of them. So it's a bit of a smash and grab draw for them.
In a sense, I mean, Carlisle actually had nearly 2/3 of possession at Wimbledon too, and look where that got them. So I think the possession stat in itself needs a lot more context than just the number. I mean, yes, on Saturday Carlisle were largely dominant of the ball, and as you've said, certainly dominant on chances and things like that. So if they can repeat that to a large degree, you do feel that results will start to turn. But there was certainly in the second half, the performance, it tailed off in terms of conviction. As much as they had the ball and they had the majority of the forward momentum, I suppose. The chances they had weren't greatly convincing the longer it went on, and then you started to worry about just getting picked off a little bit at the back, which has happened a lot this season. It took a little bit of last ditch defending on a couple of occasions to guard against that. So. I'm not saying the stats are misleading by any means, but they don't necessarily tell the whole story of a team that was overwhelming the opposition to the point where they were just besieging them, and it was a win was inevitable. It was leaning in that direction, but not completely there. This is a team that doesn't really know how to win greatly at the moment, and there was some evidence of that in
now criticism of Mike Williamson, but he likes his teams to sort of keep possession and pass the ball around. Now, Walsall, I think they're down they were one of the lowest teams on possession stats last season. It's not much better this season, but we're much more incisive when we're in possession.
Yeah.
Walsall don't try and just keep the ball. They try and sort of create openings and be efficient with possession.
Yeah.
Where some teams sort of just try and keep hold of the ball, and they just encourage teams to sort of press them, which can be a mistake. And it's something Walsall enjoy. Walsall enjoy that press. When people try and just keep possession, Walsall are very good at pressing, and we've had quite a few goals come from that.
Well, it's interesting you say that, Simon, because that was the archetype of what happened at Wimbledon. Really, Carlisle did try to play the Williamson way, I suppose, if you want to call it that, and were keeping the ball at the back, but they were doing it very awkwardly, and Wimbledon were very aggressive onto them. The midfield in particular, just were snapping onto Carlisle. Carlisle didn't have the sort of wit or the variety, I suppose, to beat that press, and they were overwhelmed. So it'll be interesting as to how Mike Williamson learns from that, perhaps adjusts to that, because if Walsall are of a style to do something similar, then the risks are evident for Carlisle there on Tuesday.
I think obviously Williamson with MK Dons, the width of their pitch. I checked the stats on this. It's wider than it's long, their pitch. It's like they're playing the wrong way around. And when you want to pass the ball around, you want.
Is that legal? Is that legal for a pitch to be wider than it is long?
Well, maybe I've got that stat wrong, but it's that's what it was inferring from the stats I looked at. It's a very wide pitch. It's a very wide pitch at Stadium MK. And for a team that wants to pass it around, that's exactly what you want. And we get that with a lot of the Premiership grounds. They're very wide pitches because it's all the passing game, isn't it?
Yeah.
So then when you come to Walsall, it's quite a tight pitch. And a lot of the teams that like to pass it around a lot sort of realise they've got no space.
Right.
And that's helped Walsall. But Walsall do pass it around on occasions quite well, but we have times when it doesn't work. The one game we're trying to, I keep mentioning it, even though I'm trying to forget it, at home to Fleetwood, and we lost 6-2.
Yeah, where did that come from?
That was just some mad game. That was Fleetwood. Fair play to them; they're excellent, but everything they hit went in.
Yeah.
And it was just one of them. There's a dubious goal, a couple of lucky ones and that sort of thing, but a couple of very, very well taken goals as well. But Walsall sort of brushed that off. At Chesterfield, 2-2 away. We should have won that game, gifted him a goal. And then gifted Grimsby a goal on Saturday as well. It was a foul on the keeper, but it was a gift. But thankfully, Walsall were sort of overall, we'd battered them by that point, so it didn't really make much difference. I'm just going to comment from the Abandoned Hunter. That 6-2 defeat was a reality check, and we have reacted well from it. Yeah, I think it was. But in that game, Walsall started remarkably well. I mean, Fleetwood though were very good. But yeah, it was a game Walsall started well. First half an hour, Walsall were excellent, which is the opposite of what we've seen recently. Quite often, Walsall have been a bit wayward first sort of 25, 30 minutes. But the second half, we seemed to come alive, and it was the opposite in that game. But I think as Abandoned Hunter says, it was a reality check, because you can get sort of believe your own hype if you're not careful, and think, oh yeah, we just need to turn up, and that's something we're also got to be careful of. There's lots of quality in the Carlisle team. Confidence is not great at the moment for them, but the quality's there, so Walsall are going to be on it. But it's one of those, if Walsall were to get a couple of goals, then we could imagine it not going well for you.
Yeah, I mean, that was key at Wimbledon. I mean, Wimbledon did get a couple of certainly one early goal, and Carl didn't really have the reply. There's an interesting stat, actually. I mean, Saturday, coming from behind to draw with Harrogate, That's the first time Carlisle have come from behind in a league game to get a result since New Year's Day. And when you think of how many games they've been behind in that time, that's a lot, a majority. And they've not been able to, once they go behind, they've not been able to get a result. So hopefully it's a little sign of a bit of resolve coming back. It's a very small sign, I suppose. It's one game, isn't it? It's a draw at home that you dominate. So it's not sensational, but you hope, and if you can't win, don't lose, that sort of thing. That's something Carlisle have really struggled to adhere to, even when they've been struggling. So at least they kind of achieved that on Saturday, if not the win that they should have done. So not great at responding to going behind has been the recent record, one they've really got to deal with to get a few results.
It's that morale thing. I think over the years, Walsall have been quite good in that respect. I think it was end of last season. The fans for a team can make such a difference. There was a couple of opportunities where Walsall had been playing well and went behind, and the fans immediately started cheering for the team when they went behind. And it was sort of like a real big sort of bully sort of, come on, we're all right, we can turn this round. And we did, and we turned it round. And that happened on a couple of occasions. It's like, if we concede a goal, it's motivation for the fans to sort of say, come on, let's go for it, sort of thing. So that's a positive. I think the biggest positive for Walsall this season is we've got strength in depth. I think previous seasons we've had sort of like a good 14, 15, maybe 16 players. And then we have a couple of injuries, and then we're struggling to name the first 11 and struggling to fill the bench. But we've got more quality in the team, but we've got the depth in the team as well. There's a couple of good players that are not making the bench at the minute. And we've got players coming back from injury. And I looked at it, and it was everybody fit. We could name 2 good starting 11s.
Right.
And that's the one. That's what's making a big difference. We've got a young player, Ronan Mayer, he's only 19. I think he must just be going 20. I think he was at loan at Walsall Olympic last season, and was doing excellent stuff for them. And we thought, this is his breakthrough season. He's going to be a regular, but he's not getting on the bench at the minute.
Yeah.
But I mean, he's really a good talent that's sort of not quite getting through into the team. And then we've got a couple of loan players, George Hall from Birmingham City. He's coming back from injury. I think last season he missed the whole of the season through injury. Season before, he was a massive prospect, and somebody had offered 5 million for him.
Wow. And
they turned down 5 million. And he's trying to get fit with Walsall. He got involved coming off the bench on Saturday and helped set up the 4th goal. But previous to that, he had a couple of games he hadn't made the bench, and it's great strength, really. I think around the 60, 65 minute mark, Walsall have got sort of quality they can bring on. And it's not for most teams at our level. When you bring in players on, it's an old guy who can't make the minutes, or a young lad who you're trying to sort of blood, aren't you? Almost.
Yeah.
So for Walsall, we're bringing on quality players. Saying that, one of those I'm referring to is at Old Head, Albert Adoma, former Villa, was with Reading, played 23 games in the Championship for Reading last season. And he's a regular sub for us. And he's got some composure and that kind of quality to help seeing the games out. We've also got Danny Johnson, who'd done very well for us previously. He's had some injury troubles, and he came on for a cameo last 10 minutes and got a goal on Saturday. It's good at the minute. The joy and the pain is the mantra of the channel. And we gain a bit of the joy at the minute. Hopefully it continues, and we test ourselves out in League One if we could get up. But so before, I think I've just made a mistake. I said Reading. It was QPR. Sorry.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Not Reading. Yeah, my mistake. British Middles. I've got Abandon Hunter. He's helping me out with comments and that sort of stuff. So I do make mistakes. That happens, doesn't it? Also a question from Abandon Hunter before I want to talk about your writing side of things. Is Greg Abbott still identifying players? Is he still involved in player recruitment?
Yeah, he's still the head of recruitment. Yeah, Simpson brought him in, I think at the start of his first full season back, which would be 22-23. He's been in there. Yeah, so Greg Abbott is still, he's still there. I think, again, someone that's, I guess, being questioned, criticised by some supporters in light of what's happened. Some of the signings, it's fair to say, haven't worked out. There's an ongoing debate there, really, about who carries the can for that. Is it the head of recruitment? Is it the manager that ultimately signs them off? They're looking to implement a new structure at Carlisle, which will involve a sporting director and the head coach. Now, they were hoping to have a sporting director in place by now. That didn't work out. That kind of backfired a bit what they were trying to do, because by everyone's understanding, they were looking to get in Liam Sweeting from MK Dons at the same time as Williamson. But it seems that Sweeting did a bit of a late U-turn after essentially accepting the job. Managed to get a better offer from his present club and stayed put. So that went on the back burner.
Tricky character then.
Fair play to him, I suppose. Yeah. So they're interviewing again for the position. So I'm sure that will flush out in due course. Whether that'll have implications for how Carlisle recruit, that'll be interesting to see, and implications for how any effect, if any, on Greg Abbott that will have. As it stands now, he's still ahead of recruitment, and I guess we'll be looking towards January, I guess, which could again be a very important month.
I think the Americans will be putting their hand in the pockets again, and I think obviously from the Americans' point of view that came in, a relegation would be sort of unthinkable, wouldn't it?
Well, I mean, certainly. They came in last November with the idea that we wouldn't have a relegation and that January would be a large part of the answer. And that didn't work out, and certainly started this season thinking promotion is the target. And that's, I'd be astonished if that happened now, really. It's certainly, Carlisle have never recovered from a start like this to get promoted before. I'm sure one or two clubs have, at certain times elsewhere, but will they get their hands in the pockets? Well, they certainly have been doing up to now, as I say, off the pitch to an enormous extent, and on the pitch to a pretty significant extent too, with the signs of likes of Wyke and Jordan Jones, who's injured at the moment. He's not coming for peanuts, it's fair to say. People like Terrell Thomas that came in from Charlton, Luke Armstrong. That these guys are, by all accounts, earning as well as any Carlisle players have ever earned, I think. So that the owners have certainly stumped up. They've certainly backed, initially Simpson really, to build this team. Will they do it again? Well, they may have to. Although, like I said before, I think regarding January as a panacea again is, it's a dangerous road to go down to see it as the only solution, because it certainly wasn't last year. It wasn't the sticking plaster we hoped. I think, as much as it's how he's going to coach this team and get it into a better system, a better method, I think that's going to be as important as anything. Yeah.
One player that Carlisle have brought in, one of the cheaper options, was an out-of-contract player, Tyler Burry, former Millwall striker, plenty of pace. Is he likely to come straight into the team, you think, or is he one you'll be working with first?
Yeah, I mean, he was a substitute on Saturday. His signing was only announced a couple of hours before the game, and he came off the bench, got into a couple of pretty good positions actually, but looked a bit rusty with his feet, I suppose, which is probably a bit to be expected.
Needs game time, I guess.
Yeah, he needs game time, of course, and I guess the only way to get game time is to play, isn't it?
That's what the Bristol Street Motors trophy's for.
Well, we're already out of that essentially, so we've only got a dead rubber left in that, and that's not for another month. I don't know. He may start if he has a bit of a reshuffle. I don't think he'll have 90 minutes in him. I wouldn't have thought at the moment. But who knows? Who knows? Williamson. He's been training with the squad for a little while now. I'd say he's a more likely substitute at the moment. But so you may see him for 20 minutes, half an hour if Carlisle need a spark. I suppose he may throw in a curveball starting him and maybe giving him an hour. I don't know. Carlisle are so desperate for a win, they're so desperate for a spark, for a lift. Williamson is trying a lot of different things in terms of starting 11s at the moment. A couple of players came back on Saturday into the team after pretty long injuries in Callum Guy and Taylor Charters, and it was their first start for, in Guy's case, nearly a year, and in Charters, since last season. So there's a lot of different things being tried. Bury is another option. They need a bit of pace, certainly in the team. It's been sorely lacking that. So hopefully, it won't take him too long to get up to speed, and it could be a real option for them.
Could be
My hunch, maybe not from the start tomorrow, though.
How many you think Carlisle will bring? Because you do generally, your away support is excellent, considering you're right up there on the edge of Scotland, pretty much. Yeah,
the away support's, and the home support, when you consider how poor the results have been over the last year, the home support has been remarkable. The away support is absolutely steadfast, and supporters will travel, up and down. There was 700, nearly 800 not at Wimbledon the other week, for example.
That's a good old journey, isn't it?
Yeah, you can say that again. Yeah. So Walsall on a Tuesday night, it's not the ideal Tuesday night, trip. It's not on the doorstep by any means. Although for Carlisle, it's certainly far from the worst trip as well. When you look at some of the other sort of southern venues we have to go to, so there'll be good support. I wouldn't want to guess at the number, but there'll be a good, I don't know, there'll be a good 300 or 400, maybe something like that. The form and the way they're playing inevitably takes one or two off those numbers, but the diehards will be there. They'll have good backing. There's support is staying with the team and the club in part because of the owners and the sort of long-term hope.
People can see the investment and can see that, hang on, this is going to turn, isn't it? They sort of keep faith with it. Yeah,
there's definitely that. This is a sort of ownership and vision, I suppose, that the club's never really had in that respect. And I think that it's a lot of what people have been yearning for Carlisle. It just needs things on the pitch to go with it as soon as possible.
Yeah. I think from Walsall's point of view, in previous seasons, we've generally done well against the teams near the top and lost against the teams near the bottom, which is, I think Walsall have started to put that right. So hopefully that can be maintained. And Walsall will be expected to win from the start we've made to the season and how well we're playing at the moment. But every game's a risk. Every game's a tough game, isn't it? There's no easy games.
Well, no, absolutely. And we've seen some results recently. I mean, results that we at Carlisle have probably been keeping a closer eye on because of our position. You've had, all of a sudden, you've had Accrington Stanley who had a long winless run. They've suddenly picked up 3 wins like that. And they've moved up out of the relegation zone, put a bit of distance. And I think one of those wins was at Gillingham, which is a real sort of seen as a real stronghold in League Two, isn't it? Morecambe went to Barrow and won the other week. Maybe not quite the surprise of that, but still on form and position it was.
Yeah.
MK
Dons.
Yeah.
MK Dons had a poor start to the season, but they're sort of starting to pick up now, aren't they?
Yeah. And as you've cited before, you guys losing 6-2 at home to Fleetwood, no one would have had that on the coupon, would they, at all?
I couldn't understand that. They'd done so well against us, and then they were 0-0 with Barra with Bromley the game after. And then he had 2 shots all game.
Yeah,
it's League Two is any sense.
Yeah, League Two is
promoted, not a great result, isn't it?
Yeah, well, of course, but League Two throws up curveballs quite regularly, doesn't it? Now, I'm waiting for Carlisle to sort of join in with some of that. Carlisle are going to need a curveball or two result, such as on Tuesday night.
Well, let's hope it doesn't start Tuesday.
Well,
we wish you well. We wish you well. I think having the sort of financial backing should help you sort of get moving in the right direction. Just before we finish off, I I'm wondering, I might get you on my other show. My other show is the Budding Author podcast. I talk to authors about their writing journey and tips and advice for writing. Because as well as the reporting for the New and Star, you've done some ghost writing for Matt Jansen and Paul Nixon, and you wrote Bolts from the Blues as well. So are you writing anything at the moment?
Not at the moment. I'm not. No. I've got a 2-year-old daughter who takes up most of my extra time and energy and attention I have. So it wouldn't really be compatible with a 3 or 4 year ghostwriting project at the moment. But that's something I'd like to do again in the future, certainly, because the experiences of doing those books were all consuming, certainly, but so fulfilling and rewarding to work with people like that as well, characters and the stories.
As you might guess, everybody's got a book, haven't they? I've got a book. How about that?
Wow. Fantastic.
I've got a trilogy, actually. But reason I mention it, I had a lovely review this morning. So shall I just read my review I had?
Why not? Because, good reviews are great, aren't they? We all get enough bad ones, don't we? So let's have the good ones.
But to be honest, I don't think I've had a bad review, to be honest. Hang on, let's get rid of that. Time to Click is a gripping and emotionally charged novel that delves into the darkest corners of human experience, expertly exploring themes of trauma, resilience, and redemption. Ethan's harrowing story is a testament to the human spirit's capacity for survival and transformation. Time to Click on ebook. I'll put a link in the description for anybody who wants to delve in. So, Time to Click. Right then.
Well, I hope it's time to click for Carlisle tomorrow, and there's a tale of redemption after some harrowing experiences on Tuesday night.
Walsall have had their fair share. We're just enjoying the joy. But the mantra on the channel, the joy and the pain. And we sampled the pain with Fleetwood, but hopefully it's more joy. So my prediction, I think I'm going to go Brave. 3-0 Walsall. What do you reckon?
Well, as we've just been talking about, League Two throws up a League Two result now and again. I'm not quite brave enough to go for Carlisle to win on respective form, but I am going to go for Carlisle just to tough out a 1-1 draw. And I think everyone at Carlisle would be pretty happy with that, to be honest. 2 unbeaten, a couple of points in a row, and a point at Walsall at the moment isn't it's certainly not a shabby result. So yeah, a late 1-1 draw and a few hundred go back up the M6 fairly happy.
Well, that'll be it. And then you got Saturday.
We have got on Saturday. We've got Cheltenham at home Saturday, so that's another big game.
Oh, you'll be right there. I think Cheltenham aren't that great, are they?
They're not, but there's only one team worse than us at the moment on the table and on form. So Cheltenham might be one of the poorer sides, but I think they've won twice as many games as Carlisle have. So nothing's easy and nothing's a given for Carlisle at the moment.
Or for any team, in this league, really. The moment you go into any game thinking you got an easy win, that's when you get thumped. As Walsall found out against Fleetwood. Right then, nice one. Thanks for coming on, John.
Been a pleasure, Simon. Thanks for having me.
Cheers, mate. Ta.
Thank you.